I hope you can hear me. It's raining out, so it's a bit moody and a bit loud, but because it's been a bit moody, it actually has kind of inspired me to talk about something that I wanted to talk about for a little while, which is the dark side of Ayurveda. And, I think with anything, especially these beautiful arts and sciences we have in the East, there can be a lot of misconstruing of information. And so, and a little bit of taking advantage, right? I think some of it naturally happens, right? Like, we live in this capitalist society, we do need to make money, there's corporate influences and all of that, but I just wanted to showcase some of the things that I've heard and learned, just so that, you're hearing a balanced view about Ayurveda, right? Because there may be people who've had Ayurvedic treatments, Ayurvedic experiences, taken Ayurvedic herbs, and had a really bad experience and really don't like it. And you know what? That's totally fair. That's also fine, right? I know I'm talking a lot about the positives and, all of these exciting things I'm doing around Ayurveda. And maybe for some people it's triggering, right? Like, I know I've even had family members who've said, like, oh yeah, I tried some Ayurvedic treatments and it didn't work, or, I felt worse. And all of those are real experiences too. So I want to talk about a couple of things. So I think the first thing is that just around the genericness of information on the internet. So now that I've studied Ayurveda a little bit more, and not saying that I'm an expert or anything, one of the big things that is just so glaringly apparent to me is that there's so much information that is really generic. And I say this because Ayurveda is about being in tune with your true nature and understanding that and following that. And so it talks about the different doshas, the different constitutions, and each of us are made up of these doshas in different levels and different ways. So I feel like I see stuff on Ayurveda, and this has been my experience, right? Like, before this, I was obviously getting lots of information online. And not to say all of it's wrong, but I feel like, with social media, a lot of it's like quite quick, fast information. So maybe things are quite simplified, but, there'll be things like fennel water is good for digestion. And that's a fair statement, but, it's not fully accurate, right? Or there's something called CCFT, like coriander, cumin, fennel tea, that people are all raving about. In fact, I rave about it too, because I've had it many times. But now that I've learned more about Ayurveda, there's actually specific ways in which you should drink these teas. And if you have a different dosha, then these different spices will affect you differently. So, for example, if you are someone who is Kapha, you may not want to take some of these digestive spices before you eat a meal, because it'll increase your appetite. And typically Kaphas are people who have a large appetite anyway. So if you're trying to, if you're working on weight management, then just randomly following like an Instagram that says, hey, this is good for your digestion, then that may not be a good thing, So I think it's really important to, if you can understand your dosha, or even if you don't understand doshas and all this is a bit over your head, just understand your body and understand, how foods affect you, what flavors, you may naturally be drawn to or averse to, because I think some of these also naturally, how do I say this? Like, for example, I think there's times when I really need some ajwain, which is ajmo or carom seeds, and I just know that I need to have some, and I'll have some and it makes me feel better, and I've asked the doctor about it, and she's like, yeah, your body's naturally craving something that's going to help you eliminate gas. And I'm a little bit prone to vata, which is this air quality, which means gas, like burpiness and stuff like that. So that's why I'm not saying don't listen to these videos and stuff online about fennel water, or CCFT, but just know that some of these are just really generic, and unless they specifically say, hey, this is appropriate for all doshas, And actually, even then, I've seen some mistakes out there. Like I saw a video that talked about sesame oil, that anyone can use sesame oil. But in fact, that's not true, because sesame, is warm. So if you are someone who is pitta, like myself, then applying sesame oil or using sesame oils is not good, because it's going to like increase your heat even more. So yeah, that was like a big sort of takeaway or aha for me. And, another example is like, there's this talk of like castor oil being so good for your hair, and it can make you have thick hair, lush hair, all this kind of stuff. But then I've also heard stories of people who've said like, oh, I used castor oil and my hair fell out. And now that I understand Ayurveda a bit more, like my understanding now is that castor oil, it's like a thicker oil, right? It's like thicker, it's warming. So it's good for someone who's more of a vata type, who has like thin hair, frail hair. It can be more nourishing for them. But if you're someone who has like pitta and especially kapha type hair, then you're adding too much nourishment, you're adding too much thick oils, and you're gonna block your roots, and then your hair is gonna fall out. And so that's what's happening. And that's why some of this information out there that's so generic, that's just saying like, use castor oil, it'll thicken your eyelashes, it'll thicken your hair. Like, you need to know a little bit more about like what your dosha is and like whether this is compatible for you. So I think that's like one big thing that has been on my mind about Ayurveda. I think the other thing is just like the commercialization of Ayurveda, right? Like, I first came to Varkala, and truthfully, when I first came here and I saw all the Ayurveda centers, especially on the cliff, I was just like, oh no, have I made a really terrible mistake? Like, this looks so commercial. Some of these places look really cheap, really dingy. Even some of the nicer places, I was still like, I don't know if I'm getting the right vibe. And the truth is, in Varkala, it's more of like an up-and-coming town, especially in the past few years. It's quite exploded in terms of its popularity. And so there's tons of more restaurants, shops, all this kind of stuff. But there's also lots more Ayurveda centers because it's popular, right? It's like popularized for like the massages and stuff. But a lot of them aren't accredited. So my understanding is that there's about 300 Ayurveda centers in Varkala, and only a handful of them are actually truly accredited. And, thankfully the one that I'm at is. And I mean, I didn't look for accreditation. I'm not exactly sure how to. Maybe I can look that up and find that out. But what I did is I had done my research before. Coming to Varkala, there was like a short list I had of Ayurveda centers. And then when I came here, I like physically went and visited some of them. And then I just like went on my intuition. I just got a sense of like the place, the vibe. And it was just very clear that this was the place that I wanted to do my Panchakarma. And I'm so glad that I did, because I know that I've ended up somewhere that's authentic and, is trying to honor Ayurveda as best as possible. And I say this because of some of the stories I've heard around some of the poor practices that some of these Ayurveda centers use. So they might reuse oils on multiple patients. So for example, like oils that maybe are used in Shirodhara, that forehead thing I was telling you about. And that like goes through your hair and stuff, right? So like, that gets reused. Or maybe even oils for Pirichil, which is that oil that's like poured all over your body. And these oils should be made naturally, right? Like, I know that they used organic coconut oil. Like, I went with them one time to like literally go and buy the coconut oil. I saw the dried coconuts being pressed and processed into coconut oil. I saw the light has come on. That would have been really great from the beginning, but here we go. What was I saying? Yeah, I saw them like chop the aloe vera plants that they were putting in my oils. So I just feel really grateful that I went somewhere that was authentic. And also on the topic of oils, there's some that are lower quality. So just like when you think about like vegetable oils that you can buy, You can buy, your extra virgin cold pressed olive oil, but you can also buy your olive flavored oil, right? Which is going to be a fraction of the cost. And there's a lot of centers that just use these cheaper oils. And so that's not what you want for, any type of treatment, right? Like, you want the best. So that's something that happens, just it is what it is. And that's also why some of these places can charge so cheap. They can charge so little for treatments. Like, you can get a massage for like 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees. And I've had a cheap massage. It was not good. And, now it makes me feel like, I don't even know what was like put on my body, right? And then beyond just that, there are other practices that just aren't done as well. So, for example, some places may not be doing the treatments as authentically. So one treatment that's done in a panchakarma, I didn't experience it, but it's called virechima, which is when you're given a medicine and it's to make you throw up. It's to clear all the kapha properties out of your body. And the authentic way of doing it is there's like a special medicine that's prepared. It's prepared into a drink, but then there's also like a capsule or something form of it. This is what the doctor explained to me. Maybe I've missed some of the details, so don't hold me to all of this. So you take this medicine, and then within about 4 to 4.5 minutes, it will naturally induce that feeling of needing to throw up. So you feel sweaty, and then you'll start throwing up. But a lot of other centers, what they do is they will make you drink, for example, like 2 liters of milk in like an hour, or like 2 liters of water. And then when you start to feel like nauseous, then you like make yourself throw up. Now that's not authentic at all. Like, it should be done in this controlled way using this medicine that's been titrated for your body type so that it happens naturally. And in fact, when I was like doing some of my research online, I actually read about this, that like, oh yeah, you'll be given these drinks to like drink like a whole volume, and then you'll be, then you'll throw up. And now I realize, like, actually that's wrong. Like, that's not the way it's supposed to happen. And if I reflect on my experience with the, I used the wrong word. When I said virechima, I meant vamana. Vamana means to throw up. Virechima is the treatment that I got, which was the one that makes you have diarrhea, and you do throw up a little bit. So when I had virechima, they gave me this drink. It was this like herbal drink that I had, and they told me, they were very specific. They said like, yeah, within like 10 to 15 minutes, you'll feel like going to the bathroom. And they said they told me it would last until about 2 p.m. And this was like basically my experience. Like, it was like quite bang on. Like, I took this drink, and then maybe within 10 to 15 minutes, I could feel my stomach gargling, and then I just had to go. And they were right. Like, basically by 12 p.m., I'd stopped the diarrhea and stopped throwing up. And then I like rested, I ate a little bit, and by 2 is when I had my energy back. So I was like, wow, this is really accurate, So yeah, I'm just sharing some of the things I've heard. One of the other things I've heard, and I've heard a couple of stories, read a couple of stories about this, and I'll share part of the story that I kind of eavesdropped. I know I shouldn't have, but I was there and I heard this lady come in, and basically this lady came into the center and she had done a panchakarma, or started a panchakarma somewhere else, and it was not done right. So, for example, on the first day, she was given 12 drops of nasyam, like medicated oil or ghee, put into her nose. And first of all, like when I had nasyam, that was like my last or my third week of my panchakarma. And nasyam is done as like a rejuvenation treatment. So you do cleansing first and then you do rejuvenation. So it doesn't really make sense that she got nasyam first, at least from my understanding of Ayurveda. Secondly, 12 drops is like a hell of a lot. Like I started with like 2 on the first day, and then it like gradually went up to more drops, like per nostril, right? And I think she also was given like some strong shirodara or some other treatment in the first few days, and she was just not feeling well. So I don't know how she found this place, but she came and, you know, was feeling really unwell. I think she's feeling like quite dizzy and it was like vertigo or something, I think. Like I said, I was just eavesdropping a little bit. And then afterwards, the doctor just said to me, like, you know, this woman came in, she went to this other place to do a panchakarma. They totally messed it up. They made her more sick, and that he's going to treat her to, now she has all these symptoms and all these complaints. So she's stopped there, but she's going to come back just to get treatment, just to recuperate from whatever they've given her. And then maybe in 6 months, if she's feeling better, she can then come back and do an actual panchakarma. So, and I had read a couple of other stories online about people doing panchakarmas and them not being right and then having to go somewhere else to get more treatment. And, you know, that's just really sad. And like, I don't have a solution for it. I'm just sharing some of the things I've heard. But like I said, there is this dark side of panchakarma, dark side of Ayurveda. I've talked about this before, but especially on Instagram around spices and things getting adulterated. So with turmeric, in India, a lot of the turmeric, I think all over India, I know it's happening here in Kerala, where farmers, what they do is with the turmeric, they extract the curcumin, they sell it to the West because they know it's a superfood and it's really popular and that, you know, they all want it, right? So they'll sell the curcumin extract to them, and then the rest just gets like recolored and like flavored and then sold here locally as turmeric. And that's why it's so cheap. But if you want real turmeric, you need to buy organic or buy the root and dry it yourself. So that's a really scary thing that I had no idea about. And it kind of makes sense because I feel like there's times, even in England, when I bought turmeric where I'm just like, it just, I don't know, it just like the color is weird or it just doesn't feel right. And so, you know, I've had real turmeric now and it's much earthier, you know? So yeah, that's one example. Another example is there are like, I guess there's 2 forms of ashwagandha, and I think there's one that's like more of the original one and the other one that's not as original. And I think that sometimes gets sold as ashwagandha. And don't ask me what the solution is to that. I don't know. Maybe just don't buy cheap, buy organic again. So yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit of this because I just think there needs to be balance in what I share, that, you know, Ayurveda isn't all roses, and, you know, if you're not in the hands of a good doctor, and even for me, you know, one of the Ayurvedic doctors I saw in London misdiagnosed me. She said that I'm a Vata Pitta constitution, and that's not actually accurate. You know, now that I am here and I've, you know, been diagnosed here, I understand that I'm Pitta with a bit of Kapha. And I didn't understand at first when they told me this. I was like, oh, these guys are wrong. Like, you know, this other Ayurvedic doctor told me I was Vata Pitta. You know, when I've done all these online quizzes, it always says I'm like more Vata. But what I realized is just this oversimplification, right? Like, just because on first looks like I'm thin and lean, you know, I'm just classified as Vata. And yes, some of my disturbances or imbalances are Vata, but that doesn't mean I'm actually Vata. So my digestion, and even, yes, I'm thin, but actually my body type, like I actually have muscle and I have different qualities. It's not just around this thinness. And that's why, you know, things online sometimes can be really simple, and these quizzes online can really simplify things. And so, yeah, I just wanted to explore some of this, share some of these things with you. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was interesting. And yeah, hopefully see you in another video. Bye.